All right, guys, here we go. So what's happening here is I'm going to be showing you notes just like I would be in class. And at the end, you'll have some type of a quiz, but bear in mind, it won't be just what's in the presentation. It'll also be things that I've said to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do. But anyway, you're going to be copying the notes in the fill in the blank packet that's online. So it's pretty straightforward. So just pay attention like you did in class. But remember, I'm going to go fast so you can stop and pause the video as many times as you need to. I'm not going to wait. Obviously, that would be dumb. But anyway, all right. So first up, immigration. This is a big deal. I told you at the beginning of the year that immigration is not a new issue, it's something that's happened all throughout the history of America. So prior to or before 1871, most immigrants coming to America came from Northern and Western Europe, which is Germany, Great Britain, Ireland, Norway, and Sweden. During the half century from 1871 until 1921, most immigrants came from Southern and Eastern Europe, which is Italy, Greece, Poland, Russia, present day Hungary, and the former Yugoslavia, as well as Asia, China, and Japan. Think of it this way: when you're looking at Europe on a map, the first group of people are the ones closest to the United States. Western Europe and Northern Europe are closer to the United States. Then the second group of people are further away. And yes, this tends to be an SOL question and a CSA question frequently. So, why do immigrants come to America? Always the answer first is they're coming to seek freedom and a better life for their family. So, the earliest immigrants, that was pretty much the case. Now, just in general, there's always some other issues, but if you're asked on any type of CSA, SOL, etc., the first answer is going to be because freedom and a better life. Even today, that's the case. People coming in to America from other countries today are looking for better lives for their families. They're afraid of certain things in their countries, or sometimes just the economic opportunity. We tend to always hear about negative things associated with immigration. However, that's not the case. Immigrants made valuable contributions to the dramatic industrial growth of America during this period. Chinese workers helped build the Transcontinental Railroad. Immigrants worked in textile and steel mills. Now remember, textiles are fabrics and cloth. Steel mills in the Northeast, like Pittsburgh. The clothing industry is most famous in New York City. Slavs, which is Eastern Europeans, Italians, and Poles worked in the coal mines of the East. They often worked for very low pay and endured dangerous working conditions to help build the nation's industrial strength. The key here is you see all these cities and locations. Usually for testing, that's what they're going to focus on. So, for example, Transcontinental Railroad is associated with Chinese workers. New York City is associated with the clothing industry. Slavs, Italians, Poles worked in the coal mines of the East, etc. Take a look at the pictures coming up. So first off, we have obviously Chinese immigrants working on the Transcontinental Railroad. You can see the picture of the tracks down at the bottom. Chinese workers are most famous for that, and it does have some negative things that happen because of it as well that we'll talk about shortly. You can see another picture here, more of the Chinese immigrants. I know most of you are already aware of this, but during this period in time, immigrants from Europe entered America through Ellis Island in New York Harbor. Their first view of America was often the Statue of Liberty as their ships arrived following the voyage across the Atlantic. So we've watched a good chunk, if not all, of the movie Titanic. So if you remember early in the movie, Fabrizio, or as I called him, Febreze, he was yelling about how he could see the Statue of Liberty when they were up at the front of the boat. So the next few pictures are obviously the Statue of Liberty, and then Ellis Island. That's where the ships would dock and people would go in. A lot of people today can find their ancestors' signatures within the records there at Ellis Island. All right, next up, immigrants began the process of assimilation into what was termed the melting pot. So assimilation is a pretty good vocabulary word. What that means is they're blending in. America is called a melting pot, obviously, because there's all different kinds of people, all different country backgrounds, etc. So while often settling in ethnic neighborhoods in the growing cities, they and their children worked hard to learn English, adopt American customs, and become American citizens. The public schools served an essential role in the process of assimilating immigrants into American society. So, yeah, a lot of people, for example, you've heard of Chinatown, obviously. A lot of people early on lived in neighborhoods that were based on where they were from because it's more comfortable. They could eat food that they're familiar with, they could talk in the same language, etc. So you can see here is a picture of Chinatown. And what I usually ask students if I was there in person is, where is Chinatown? And most people will say New York City, but there's actually Chinatowns in most big cities. For example, Chicago, San Francisco, etc. So Chinatown is not just one place; it's a place where a large number of Chinese immigrants would live. You can see in this next picture, these are Polish immigrants in New York City. And then next up, we have child labor. So this is a big deal. You guys are lucky you're in school, and a lot of you don't realize that. But during this time period, a lot of children would not get to go to school. They would be working in factories, which are dangerous. And you can see in this picture, kids don't even have shoes. These young ladies here are working in a fabrics or textiles factory in New York. The next picture, you have these young men working physical labor, coal mines, etc. Or not necessarily mines, but in general, facilities where coal was offloaded from ships brought from the mines. Next up, you can see we have another group of kids that have hard labor. I mean, what else can you say? It looks really sad. Now, what's kind of crazy is even today, people tend to live amongst people similar to themselves. So the map you're looking at here, it says predominant race slash ethnicity by tract. So this is New York City. And this was done from the census from 2007 to 2011. So you can see the very light blue to the dark blue. That is different variations of white people. Then you have, it's kind of a pinkish to a maroon color, two different variants of black people. Then you have Hispanic, three different, yellow to a dark orange, three different types of Hispanic people. And then different shades of green are different ethnicities of Asian people. And then obviously the black is no population except for the rats, of course. So immigrants were often exploited by urban political machines that provided useful services in exchange for immigrant votes, which increased animosity towards them. For example, the best thing I could say is, like, imagine if you lived in Chinatown, you're a Chinese immigrant, and a politician comes to you and says, "Hey, we're going to make sure your trash gets picked up more frequently if I become the mayor." So that leads more of the Chinese immigrants to vote for them. So when that happens, there might be other ethnicities or white people possibly that are upset and they're angry towards the immigrants because, hey, all the Chinese people are voting for this person because they're getting something. Well, the crazy thing about that is that's why you vote. You vote for the candidates who should be helping you the most, even today. That's why I always tell you, I can't tell you who to vote for. You have to figure out who benefits what you believe in. And my job is to tell you, this is what this group of people in this moment believes in. This is what this group of people in that moment believes in, because it changes throughout history. So you can see this picture. This is another textile factory, seamstresses, etc. They're making clothes in New York City. Now you can see some young men, uh, young boys, etc. Many of them don't even have shoes. My thing would be, imagine if you didn't even get the opportunity to go to school, that you had to go to a factory somewhere and work. That's kind of sad. You know, I would hate for my son to be put in that situation. So, despite all the valuable contributions immigrants made to building America during this period, immigrants often faced hardships and hostility. There was fear and resentment that immigrants would take jobs for lower pay than American workers would accept, and there was prejudice based on religious and cultural differences. We've talked about that on and off throughout the year. Even today, that's one of the issues regarding immigration is that they will come to America because wherever they're coming from, there's problems and issues they don't want to face. They're seeking safety. They're seeking the opportunity to make more money. So even if they take $5 an hour, which is well below the minimum wage, to them it's a big upgrade from where they came from. And Americans become upset. But another thing to think about, would many Americans do some of the jobs that they did? During this time period, for example, Chinese workers working on the Transcontinental Railroad, they're doing really hard work and not a lot of other people wanted to do it. So, mounting resentment led Congress to limit immigration through the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 and the Emergency Quota Act of 1921. These laws effectively cut off most immigration to America for the next several decades. However, the immigrants of this period and their descendants continue to contribute immeasurably to American society. Think about that today. What if Congress banned people from any particular place? You can't come here. That's what some people want to do. Some people want that to happen. So this has happened in history. Kind of crazy if you think about it. So this picture that you're looking at, a lot of students have a hard time understanding this. This is the Statue of Liberty, but if you look at it, the face is now Chinese. And what this is kind of like propaganda, political cartoon, scaring people, saying if we keep letting Chinese people into America, this is what's going to happen to our country. So that's the type of fear mongering that was going on during this time period. A lot of people were so upset with Chinese immigrants and other immigrants as well. This is another image that is really scary in the context of today. For example, they're demonizing the Chinese people. The exclusion fence, they're not letting them come in. They're making them, basically seem evil. And we'll see much more of this type of thing as we get to World War II, where the media, propaganda, etc., is out there for the public. Today, we would never see something like this from the mainstream media for the most part. But they still do fearmonger in some issues and things, but it might not be as outright obvious as this.